everybody. Welcome to the Dissecting Fiction podcast. I'm Vinny Murphy.
And I'm Christiaan.
And today we have Steve and Dave from ToyStoreGuide.com. You guys might recognize both of them. Steve has been a producer on our show since the beginning, and Dave has really been around helping quite a bit since the beginning as well. I think, Dave, you have a credit on that first YouTube video we did, if I'm correct.
I think I'm associate producer.
Yes, something to that effect. Yeah, we made something up. I don't know. Why don't you guys let the people know what Toy Store Guide is?
Well, simply stated, Toy Store Guide is it's an online directory of stores, mainly around the United States, but also now we're diving into around the world a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a way for us to list the toy stores in different areas and to sort of work as a better guide. I mean, it's essentially in the name. It's quite literally a reference to what toy stores are in your area, but it's a little bit more quality controlled than just going on Google, let's say.
Yeah, have you seen any feedback on that? You know, I know sometimes Google isn't the most reliable for directions or hours or really any good information about the stores.
Right. If I was visiting a city, I would trust Toy Store Guide more than I would trust Google, because Google is just like scraping information from whatever's on public record and spitting it out. And they do have like a way to verify information, a couple of hoops they can make business owners jump through in order to get their business listing verified. But by and large, a lot of them aren't. So you can end up driving 40 miles to a store that doesn't exist anymore.
We reach out, we talk to every toy store that's listed. We get their permission. We get their feedback before we publish the site. We try to work hand in hand with them. But the other part that the toy stores have been telling us is there really is no way. There's no section for like vintage toy stores on Google. It's not a category that they have. So if you search Google for toy stores, it ends up becoming a lot of Targets and Walmarts and some newer toy stores that do exist, but might be more for children. And really our site caters to the adult collector.
How did you come up with this idea? I mean, we're going to get into a little bit of how this pertains to fiction in a minute, but like, what was your motivation to start this site?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that, like to try to use Google as a reference. You'd end up having to sit there for half a day doing research, and sometimes it's trial and error. But when you do find a cool spot, you can't wait to share that cool spot with your friends. So this site essentially does that for you. For me, one of the coolest parts of it is when you're going to a different city, let's say. You may not already have a friend in that city who's gonna be, you know, in the know. So you can refer to the site and trust that the stores are what you're looking for. And actually, you can see for yourself with these microsites that are set up. You can get a look inside the store and see what they're all about.
We had a hard time even traveling. Like you'd go on Google, and I think I'm pretty tech savvy, and I would look at a store and I was like, oh, this place seems great. You drive, it's not that great. Or you look at a store, it's like, oh, I don't know about this, if you can find them. And then you found out like a month later, oh, that place would have been awesome. So while traveling, we started talking about that. We started talking about, you know, we wish there was a site that would explain to us, hey, this store is good and this store, you know, not so good, or just a full list and we could decide.
Have you guys been getting like a good response from the toy store owners?
Yeah, they're very receptive. Everyone seems, I mean, free publicity is always great. It's another way for them to get their brand out there. And we've been getting great feedback from the users too, that, and so many people say this is a great idea. Thanks for doing this. Other people said that, you know, they had that idea. Like, you know, I always said that this should exist. And they're just thankful that we were able to just come along and take part.
Yeah, essentially we had to do the work, like the actual legwork of researching and listing, and then just make it easy to navigate. You know, we wanted to make a website that would be easy for people to use, that would be intuitive and sort of fun in a way.
Dude, I think you guys have done a good job of that after looking at the site. I think it's interesting that you brought up specifically this idea of vintage toys. And this is really where we feel the connection to Toy Store Guide. I mean, we've been talking about it as, you know, in the current economic climate, these toy stores really do need support. And this is a great way to find out where they are and what they're able to provide. But I know a lot of the interest that we all have in toys was largely driven from that action figure boom in the 80s and 90s. Dave, I know you're really into Exo-Squad. I just figured I'd try to get you started on that a little bit.
And I'm nodding my head at you.
What do you think is the draw between, having like a great story, like something that was very planned out and well produced, like an Exo-Squad cartoon? What makes having a toy of that special?
Well, I think they did figure it out in the 80s where it was like, what feeds the beast? So they were making awesome cartoons and movies and awesome toy lines, which made sure you watched the cartoon. Exo Squad was, to me, as far as I ever found, one of the first ones that was more serious and it was episodic, where it was one big story. It wasn't like G.I. Joe, where you jump in, you watch an episode, you jump out. You're talking to me, and the 90s were the mecca, the best times for toys, as far as I'm concerned. That's just my age. And Exo Squad, the attention to detail with those were just amazing to me. And the playability in that was something else.
Yeah, they found a great scale for those figures. They had a lot of points of articulation, so like there was just like a lot that you can do with them. And obviously, the reason for the scale was because of the vehicles and the crafts and stuff that they were in, which took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there is, though, toys have certainly gotten more advanced, and a lot of the technology being applied to make the sculpting more intricate has really taken hold in like the last 20 years. I think right before that, you do have this really impressive sort of golden age of toys based on stories. I know one of the reasons that I was always drawn to action figures was I felt like I was continuing the story from what I was watching. Christiaan, you're a little younger than really everyone on the podcast right now. Do you have like a similar experience as a kid? Were action figures as much of like a storytelling tool for your generation?
I had a different kind of toy, but I would collect action figures. I mainly collected Transformers, and I kind of like the ability that it was kind of like a game and a puzzle at the same time for Transformers. You can either figure out how to transform them, or you can just like find new combinations for them a lot of the times too. And for me, yeah, there was a certain extent of like building a story out of them. But my favorite toys were the ones that had a lot of like interactability outside of just like my imagination aspect.
I feel like that's part of the reason why I think, even though growing up we had so many different action figures, the Batman's, a lot of superhero stuff. Something about Exo Squad just putting the 5 minutes of putting the guy in the suit and then taking him out of the E-frame. I think something there was just, you could do that all day.
It really gave you something to do.
The success of Transformers over time is probably a confirmation that that's a huge element in kids' minds. This ability not only to like replicate stories, but to have something physically to do with the toys. I know I was never super into Transformers. I also wasn't super into the cartoon, but anytime I would get anything like G.I. Joe, I'd like it more, like the more stuff it came with, because I felt like it let me modify what was going on in front of me, even though my stories were kind of lame because I didn't have a lot of G.I. Joes. So I had two Storm Shadows. There was a good Storm Shadow, a bad Storm Shadow. Yeah, it was kind of sad, my G.I. Joe stories. Ryu was involved a lot because I had the Street Fighter 2 G.I. Joes. So my Joe team was very atraditional. But, they got the job done.
The Street Fighter 2 G.I. Joes were awesome in the. That's something that I haven't gotten into collecting again yet. And I'm afraid the price of G.I. Joes are skyrocketing, and I think they've been skyrocketed, and I'm just afraid to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, collecting is always sort of a commitment. You got to be afraid when you see something new that you want that you're not going to end up spending, a few $100 more to complete the set.
Part of the starting and using Toy Store Guide as something as an outlet to give back to the toy community was I was telling people, I think it was just more of hoping, that my collection's about done. There's not many more toys that I want to buy because mainly I'm rebuying things I had as a child. But then sometimes I'm buying things because I didn't have it as a child. So I kept on thinking, oh, my collection's close to, done. How am I going to continue, with this community? So we said, hey, we'll start the website and we'll work on that, a few hours every day. But then I find myself that, I lied. I'm going to keep on buying toys and looking and viewing and studying all these stores around the country is not helping at all.
I think because toy collecting, even though it's very widespread, there's so many little niches to it. Like there's so many different lines people collect, and there's so many, different reasons they're going after them. You always run into these weird like anomalies. Like there are, tons of channels on YouTube that are just toys at this point, and they're all different. And having a resource where you can get in contact with the right people is important. And, it used to be you really had to go to conventions to check everything out. Obviously, right now, a lot of that is kind of up in the air when we'll be able to go back to conventions anyway. And I think having a place to go where you could contact 4 or 5 stores in one day if you're looking for something isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, and I mean, so with the COVID and the stay at home, we immediately started saying, hey, these stores still need support. Go reach out to them on Facebook and Instagram and see what they have. And the first month of stay at home, I was doing a lot of the stores that I've been interacting with saying, hey, do you have, this Wolverine, or do you have this? Can you send it? And I'll PayPal them. And what a great day to break up the monotonous when a box came from places in like Washington or Chicago.
Yeah, definitely. It's always exciting to get to expand your collection, especially when there's very little to do. I want to pose a question to everyone, and I'll go last because I'm posing the question. We'll start with Dave. Dave, what's your favorite toy line of all time? And if it's Exo-Squad, pick something else.
If it's not Exo-Squad, it probably is Batman the Animated Series. And that's a full timing thing that just came out at the right time during my childhood to make that something that I cared about. And when I started really collecting as an adult, that's kind of where I started.
What do you think drew you to that line more than maybe something else? I mean, there are a lot of comparable lines from around that time. You get like the Toy Biz X-Men, things like that. I know you do have some other lines, but why Batman the Animated Series? Is there a reason, like a design element or connection to the story?
It would be the I don't know, for some reason I think you just love Batman, maybe with the movies turned into the cartoon, turned into the series, because any answer I can give, you can say the same thing about X-Men the Animated Series, which is right there, probably number 2 underneath Batman. What a great cartoon that you were going to watch every Saturday morning. And the amount of X-Men toys was just incredible. I mean, characters that I still haven't heard of and I had action figures from.
Steve, what's your favorite line?
So I think for me, the Kenner superpowers, just because all the figures that they released were like the classic suits. There weren't any wacky versions like that would come later. So when you would get Superman, you would just get the blue suit Superman with a red cape. Like it wasn't all this like hoopla and stuff when they would come out with every single style of Batman you can imagine. And for Christmas, your parents would go to the toy store and buy you all the wrong versions, but the standard issue one that you wanted to use to reenact the movie or cartoon you just watched. Like that was frustrating for me as a kid, but Kenner Superpowers did a good job of just here's the most notable suit that they were wearing in all their appearances, and we're not gonna fill it up with any wacky alterations.
Yeah, like a denim jacket Batman, right?
Yeah, we're gonna have another episode about that. Also known as the dungaree jacket Batman.
Yeah, denim jacket Batman's going to be an ongoing theme over the next year. Pay attention, folks. Christian, favorite toy line?
I mentioned it earlier. It was the Beast Wars Transformers line. As a kid, I really liked animals. And, well, they were all animals, and they also turned into robots, and I liked robots. So it was a pretty easy combination. And I also just like the whole interactability about them. I liked how you can kind of see over time how the characters changed. Because with Transformers, they repaint each character like 50 million different times and call it a different character. That was mainly what I grew up with in terms of action figures. And yeah, that's my favorite toy line.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up like those variations, like the paint changes. If you have a chance to check it out on YouTube, Scott Knightlich under Spectre Creative, you may know him as Toy Guru. He used to run Matty Collector. He talks a lot about that. And he also talks a lot about the art of writing those profiles when you have to change characters and all different things like that. It's actually incredibly interesting to see how much storytelling is going on kind of behind the scenes as they're making those decisions. And yeah, Transformers was definitely... I think Beast Wars was even lighter than the original series. The original series, it felt like it was just, here's 20 different planes, different colors, could be a different guy.
Well, you could come up with like all kinds of different animals, and they all had like little cards with them too, which I really enjoyed. You don't really see that anymore, those little like trading cards.
Yeah, helping to create that story too. I mean, I still have a bag of my X-Men ones like sitting in this room right now. I don't even have those figures, most of them. And I still have those profile cards because that's how I learned who characters were, along with collectible like cards, like trading cards. Those are also like a big, big part of 90s media.
Yeah, you have to have an old Trapper Keeper full of card backs and trading cards.
Yeah, I did post a few of them on Instagram. I'm Vinny Murph on Instagram. By the way, if also you want to see a lot of cool toy stuff, outside of following Toy Store Guide on Instagram, follow Toy DeLorean. That's Dave's account, and he's always posting cool stuff on there. Now I'm on the spot. I think my favorite toy line ever, and this is because I've started collecting right going into high school. It's probably DC Universe Classics. You get a lot of the design elements from the Kenner superpowers, but you also get that kind of updated sculpting, and I'm just a fan of the 6-inch scale. I think it's the best looking scale. Obviously, I grew up on the 4-inch and 3 3/4, but 6-inch has really been, what I've primarily collected.
Yeah, I do think. I also think a 6-inch scale, or at least a 5-inch scale, I think that's really where it's at artistically.
I think that's where toys started to look really good, was when they started getting a little bit bigger, just enough to see a lot of detail. Well, we're going to wrap up here, I think, guys. I just want to ask the guys from ToyStoreGuide.com if there's anything they want our audience to know and places we can find them.
All right, well, visit us. Our URL is ToyStoreGuide.com, and we're on all major social medias. We're growing every day. While we're recording this, I think we're almost at 150 stores.
Yeah, I would say if you're anything like us, and I would imagine, or I'd hope you would be if you're on a site like this, and you enjoy going to toy stores and you're into action figures and stuff like that, the site would work to help you figure out which stores you'd probably want to make sure to hit when you're in different areas. And it's also kind of cool because it sort of works as an anchor when you go to a new location, in the sense that a good restaurant might work as an anchor in a particular city. But the cool thing about these toy stores, usually there's a sense of community too. So when you go there, you kind of speak to people and just keep that community going.
Yeah, we think that's important too. Last couple of months, obviously, we've been plugging ToyStoreGuide.com, but Christian and I always talk about all the comic book stores, the record stores in the area that really need your support right now. It's tough times economically for a lot of people, but if you have the means and you're able to pick something up, not only will it help someone out, it'll probably keep you a little less bored when we're stuck inside. But I want to thank Steve and Dave for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
And,
thanks, Ben. Thanks, Christian.
You're welcome.
If you want to find out more about what's going on with Dissecting Fiction, Steve has a new show called The Common Link that's going to be popping up every once in a while. You can follow us on pretty much all big social media. Just look for Dissecting Fiction. I think the only one that we're a little off on is Twitter. We're Dissect Fiction because they don't allow as many characters as they don't in their posts either. Just put us into Google Dissecting Fiction. You're going to find us. A lot of exciting projects coming up, and you might see some crossovers. Right, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll see a bunch of those. Also, look for some updates to the Dissecting Fiction website, dissectingfiction.com. That'll also make things a lot easier to find.
Yeah, no, we're making everything easy for you to find. That's the new direction for the year. Toys, more podcasts. Just look for Dissecting Fiction. What is that?
And being found. The new direction for 2020 and moving forward is that we want to be found.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's we should make t-shirts. That and Denim Batman should be our t-shirts. But I'm Vinny Murphy.
I'm Christian Gutlick.
And thanks for listening.